The first time Mia Evans spilled coffee on him, Lucas Caldwell nearly fired her on the spot, which would have been impressive considering he didn't actually employ her. The dark liquid soaked through his crisp white shirt, burning his skin and ruining what had already been a terrible morning. "I am so sorry," Mia gasped, frantically grabbing napkins from the counter. "Let me help you." "Don't," Lucas snapped, stepping back from her outstretched hands. "You've done enough." The small coffee shop fell silent as customers turned to watch the commotion. Lucas Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Shipping International, one of the largest maritime logistics companies in the country, wasn't accustomed to starting his day with third-degree burns and public humiliation. "It was an accident," Mia said, her voice softer now but still firm. "Your order was a triple espresso, black. I thought I ordered a medium Americano with an extra shot," Lucas corrected her, dabbing ineffectively at his shirt. "Not that it matters now." "No, you definitely said triple espresso," Mia insisted, her green eyes narrowing slightly. "I remember because you were on your phone and barely looked up when you ordered." Lucas opened his mouth to argue but stopped. Had he been distracted? He'd been on an important call with his Tokyo office when he'd reached the front of the line. Maybe he had misspoken. "Look, I'm really sorry about your shirt," Mia continued, "but I can remake your drink, the correct one this time." Something in her tone, not apologetic exactly, but not combative either, made Lucas pause. He was used to people cowering when he was angry. This barista was different. "Fine," he sighed. "Americano, medium, extra shot." While Mia prepared his drink, Lucas checked his emails, trying to ignore the uncomfortable dampness of his shirt and the stares from other customers. When she handed him the new coffee, he was surprised to find a bakery bag alongside it. "I didn't order this," he said. "It's a blueberry muffin," Mia explained. "On the house for your incident?" Lucas nodded curtly and left without another word. It wasn't until he was in his car that he tried the Americano. It was perfect, better than any coffee he'd had in months. The muffin, still warm, melted in his mouth. For the first time that morning, Lucas Caldwell smiled. The next day, Lucas found himself back at the same coffee shop, telling himself it was just because it was conveniently located between his penthouse and office. Nothing to do with the green-eyed barista who had challenged him. Mia was at the counter, her curly brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She recognized him immediately, a small smile playing at her lips. "Americano, medium, extra shot?" she asked. "Yes," Lucas replied, surprised she remembered, "and a blueberry muffin. Coming right up." This time, Lucas left his phone in his pocket and watched her work. She moved with efficiency but not hurry, focusing intently on each step of the process. When other customers entered, she greeted each one by name, asking about children, pets, weekend plans. Lucas couldn't remember the last time someone had shown genuine interest in his life beyond what he could do for them professionally. When she handed him his order, their fingers brushed briefly. "No spills today, I promise," she said with a grin. Lucas found himself returning her smile. "I appreciate that. I'm running low on shirts." It became a routine. Every morning, Lucas stopped by the coffee shop. Mia would have his order ready, sometimes suggesting a different pastry or occasionally convincing him to try a seasonal drink. They exchanged small talk, safe, superficial conversations about weather or local news, but Lucas found himself looking forward to those brief interactions more than any other part of his day. He never mentioned what he did for a living. After years of people treating him differently once they knew about his company and wealth, it was refreshing to be just another customer. 2 weeks into their morning ritual, Lucas arrived at the coffee shop to find Mia absent from her usual spot behind the counter. "Where's Mia?" he asked the teenage barista who took his order. "Day off," the boy replied disinterestedly. "Want the usual." The coffee tasted wrong that day. Lucas told himself it was just because the kid didn't know how to pull a proper shot of espresso. When Mia returned the following morning, Lucas felt an embarrassing surge of relief. "Miss me?" she teased, already preparing his Americano. "The coffee wasn't the same," he admitted, then quickly added, "They didn't get the temperature right." "Uh-huh," Mia nodded, clearly not believing his excuse. Well, I'm back now, so your coffee crisis is averted. As she handed him his drink, Lucas noticed a smudge of paint on her wrist. You're an artist, he asked. Mia looked surprised, then glanced down at her hand. Oh, yeah. Just a hobby, really. I was working on a new piece yesterday. That's why I took the day off. Good lighting. What do you paint? Seascapes, mostly. She shrugged as if embarrassed. I grew up near the ocean, miss it here in the city. Lucas thought of the massive shipping port his company operated just 30 miles away. The sea is just a short drive. Not when you don't have a car, Mia laughed. Besides, I work 6 days a week here. Before he could stop himself, Lucas asked, what if I drove you sometime to see the ocean? The words hung between them, both looking equally surprised that he'd spoken them. Mia's cheeks flushed slightly. Are you asking me out, Americano guy? She asked, using the nickname he'd heard her use with the other baristas. Lucas hadn't been on a real date in years. His last relationship had ended when his ex-girlfriend admitted she'd only been interested in his money and connections. Since then, he'd buried himself in work, finding it easier than risking disappointment again, but something about Mia felt different. Real. I guess I am, he replied. And my name is Lucas, by the way, Lucas Caldwell. Well, Lucas Caldwell, Mia said, writing something on his coffee cup. I'm free on Monday. When he looked at his cup later, he found her phone number written in neat script, followed by a small coffee cup drawing. Monday came, and Lucas found himself uncharacteristically nervous as he drove to pick up Mia. He'd deliberately chosen to drive his older Audi rather than the Bentley, wanting to continue the illusion that he was just an ordinary guy. Mia lived in a small apartment above a bookstore in one of the city's older neighborhoods. When she came down the steps, Lucas had to remind himself to breathe. Away from the coffee shop, dressed in a simple sundress and denim jacket, she was stunning. Nice car, she commented as she slid into the passenger seat. Thanks, Lucas replied, relieved she didn't seem to recognize the model's 6-figure price tag. The drive to the coast was filled with easy conversation. Lucas learned that Mia had moved to the city 3 years ago to pursue art, working at the coffee shop to pay bills while trying to build a portfolio. What about you? She asked. What do you do when you're not critiquing baristas' espresso techniques? Lucas hesitated. I work in shipping. Logistics, mainly. It wasn't a lie exactly, just an enormous understatement. Caldwell Shipping International employed over 15,000 people worldwide and controlled a significant percentage of the Pacific Rim's container traffic. That sounds complicated, Mia said. It can be. But it's interesting connecting people and products across the world. When they reached the shore, Mia kicked off her sandals immediately, running toward the water with childlike enthusiasm. Lucas followed more slowly, watching her joy with a strange ache in his chest. Come on. She called, waves lapping at her ankles. The water's not that cold. Lucas removed his shoes and rolled up his pants, joining her at the edge of the surf. He couldn't remember the last time he'd done something so simple, so disconnected from spreadsheets and quarterly reports. They spent hours walking along the shoreline, collecting shells and talking. Mia told him about growing up in a coastal town in Maine, how her parents had wanted her to pursue a practical career instead of art. They mean well, she explained, skipping a stone across the water. They just worry about me struggling. What about your family? Lucas thought about his father, who had built Caldwell Shipping from nothing, and his mother, who had died when he was in college. My father was demanding. He had high expectations. And did you meet them? Mia asked. Lucas thought about the multinational company he now ran, larger and more profitable than his father had ever imagined. I think so. He died before I could really ask him. Mia's hand found his, squeezing gently. The gesture was so natural, so comforting, that Lucas felt something inside him shift. They had dinner at a small seafood restaurant overlooking the water. Lucas had to stop himself from ordering the most expensive wine on the menu out of habit, instead choosing a modest bottle that wouldn't raise questions. This has been the best day I've had in a long time, Mia said as they watched the sunset from the restaurant's deck. Me too, Lucas agreed, surprising himself with how true it was. When he drove her home, there was a moment of awkward silence in the car. "I'd like to see you again," Lucas said finally. "Not just at the coffee shop," Mia smiled. "I'd like that too." Their first kiss was brief, just a gentle press of lips in the soft glow of the street lamp outside her apartment, but it left Lucas feeling more alive than he had in years. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a new routine. Lucas still came to the coffee shop each morning, but now they also spent evenings and weekends together. He took her to art galleries and jazz clubs. She introduced him to hole-in-the-wall restaurants and community gardens he'd never noticed, despite living in the city for years. Lucas found himself dreading the inevitable moment when she would discover who he really was. Each time they went out, he chose places where he was unlikely to be recognized, paid in cash to avoid using his distinctive black card, and steered conversations away from anything that might reveal his position. The deception weighed on him, especially as he fell deeper in love with Mia's honesty, her unflinching authenticity in a world where Lucas was surrounded by people wearing masks. A month into their relationship, the moment Lucas had been dreading finally arrived. They were having dinner at a small Italian restaurant when Lucas noticed a business associate entering with his wife. He instinctively angled his chair away and raised the menu to partially shield his face. "Are you okay?" Mia asked, noticing his sudden tension. "Fine," Lucas replied too quickly. "Just saw someone I know." Mia turned slightly. "Do you want to go say hello?" "No," Lucas said firmly. "It's just a work acquaintance." But it was too late. The man had spotted him and was approaching their table with a broad smile. "Lucas Caldwell." "What a surprise seeing you in a place like this." The man extended his hand. "Thomas Richards, remember me? We met at the Maritime Industry Awards last year." Lucas shook his hand reluctantly. "Of course, Thomas, nice to see you." Thomas turned his attention to Mia. "And who might this lovely lady be? I don't believe I've seen you at any of the company functions." Before Lucas could answer, Mia extended her hand. "I'm Mia Evans. Lucas and I are dating." "Wonderful. The elusive CEO has finally found someone to pull him away from that office," Thomas laughed. "My wife is always saying the same thing about me, that I work too hard, but I tell her, that's what it takes when you're running departments for a company as massive as Caldwell Shipping." Lucas watched Mia's expression shift as realization dawned. "CEO," she repeated, looking between the two men. Thomas looked confused. "Of course, Lucas here is practically shipping royalty, the Caldwell and Caldwell Shipping International." He clapped Lucas on the shoulder. "Well, I won't interrupt your evening further. Lovely to meet you, Mia." As Thomas walked away, a heavy silence fell over their table. "You're a CEO," Mia said finally. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Lucas admitted, "of a multinational shipping company." "Yes." Mia took a long sip of her wine. "Why didn't you tell me?" Lucas struggled to find the right words. "I wanted you to know me, not my position or my bank account." "So you lied?" "I never lied," Lucas defended. "I just didn't tell you everything." Mia's eyes flashed. "That's the same thing, Lucas. You let me believe you were just some mid-level logistics guy, all those times I talked about struggling to make rent or saving up for art supplies." Her voice cracked slightly. "You must have thought I was so pathetic." "No, never," Lucas insisted, reaching for her hand, but she pulled away. "Mia, please understand. People treat me differently when they know who I am. They want things from me: connections, money, status." "I didn't want that with you." "So instead, you decided I was the kind of person who would only care about your money." Mia stood up, grabbing her purse. "That says more about what you think of me than anything else." "Mia, please, I need to go," she said, her voice tight. "I can get a cab." Before Lucas could stop her, she was walking out of the restaurant. He threw cash on the table and followed, but by the time he reached the street, she was already in a taxi, pulling away. Lucas tried calling her that night. Then the next morning, his texts went unanswered. When he went to the coffee shop, the teenage barista informed him that Mia had switched shifts. After a week of silence, Lucas was desperate. He considered going to her apartment, but feared it would seem like stalking. Instead, he wrote her a long email, explaining everything: how his last relationship had ended because of his wealth, how refreshing it had been to be treated as just another person, how sorry he was for not trusting her with the truth. 3 days later, there was still no response. Lucas threw himself into work, staying at the office until midnight, taking calls with international offices at all hours. His assistant commented on his haggard appearance but knew better than to pry. 2 weeks after their disastrous dinner, Lucas was leaving a late meeting when his phone pinged with a text from an art gallery in the city. Opening tonight, 7:10 p.m. Featured artist, Mia Evans. Thought you might want to know. Javier was a gallery owner Lucas had invested with years ago. Lucas stared at the message, heart pounding. Mia had mentioned working toward a gallery showing, but he hadn't realized it was happening so soon. Without allowing himself to overthink, Lucas changed direction, telling his driver to take him to the gallery address. The small space was crowded when he arrived. Lucas hung back, scanning the room until he spotted her. Mia was wearing a simple black dress, her curly hair loose around her shoulders as she spoke animatedly with a group of people about a large canvas depicting a stormy seascape. She was radiant. And Lucas had never felt more certain that he loved her. He waited, watching as she moved from group to group. When the crowd thinned, he approached her as she stood alone, examining one of her paintings. "Congratulations," he said softly. Mia turned, her expression unreadable. "Lucas, I didn't expect to see you here. A friend told me about the opening." He gestured to the paintings surrounding them. "These are incredible, Mia. You've captured something essential about the ocean, the power and the peace of it." She accepted the compliment with a small nod. "Thank you for coming." They stood in awkward silence before both speaking at once. "I'm sorry, I read your email." They stopped, and despite everything, shared a small smile. "You first," Lucas said. Mia took a deep breath. "I read your email. I understand why you didn't tell me everything right away. But relationships need trust, Lucas. How can we build anything real if we're hiding parts of ourselves?" "You're right," Lucas agreed. "I should have trusted you sooner. I was just afraid." "Of what?" "Of not being enough without all this." He gestured vaguely, encompassing his wealth, his position. "Of you seeing the real me and being disappointed." Mia's expression softened. "The real you is the man who comes to my coffee shop every morning. Who drove me to the ocean because I mentioned missing it. Who listens when I talk about art like it matters." She stepped closer. "That's who I fell in love with, Lucas, not your job title. You fell in love with me," Lucas repeated, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. "Yes," Mia said simply. "And it terrified me when I thought you didn't trust me enough to know who you really are." Lucas reached for her hand, relieved when she didn't pull away. "I love you too, Mia. All of you, your talent, your kindness, your stubbornness about coffee orders." She laughed, the tension between them finally breaking. "I was right about that, you know. You definitely ordered an espresso that first day. If you say so," Lucas conceded, pulling her closer. "I'm willing to admit I might have been distracted." "By what?" "By a beautiful barista with green eyes who wasn't intimidated by me." As they stood surrounded by Mia's paintings of the sea, Lucas made a silent promise to himself never to hide from her again. Not his wealth, not his fears, not his love. 6 months later, Mia moved into Lucas's penthouse apartment. At her insistence, they converted one of the spare bedrooms into a studio where she could paint, the large windows offering spectacular views of the city skyline. Lucas had worried that his world board meetings, charity galas, business trips would overwhelm her. Instead, Mia navigated it with the same authentic charm that had captured his heart. She asked intelligent questions at business dinners, wore sneakers with evening gowns to formal events when her feet hurt, and charmed his most difficult clients with her straightforward approach. In turn, Lucas found himself embracing Mia's world community art projects, weekends at the beach with her artist friends. And yes, still stopping by her coffee shop when their schedules aligned, though now he was known to all the staff as the CEO, a nickname that made Mia roll her eyes affectionately. A year to the day after their first coffee mishap, Lucas took Mia back to the shore where they'd had their first date. As the sun set over the water, turning the waves to gold, he knelt in the sand and pulled out a ring box. "Mia Evans," he said, voice steady despite his racing heart, "you spilled coffee on me, argued with me, and then showed me what it means to live authentically. I don't want to spend another day without knowing you'll be there to correct my coffee order every morning for the rest of our lives." Tears spilled down Mia's cheeks as she laughed. "That's your proposal, a reminder of how I ruined your shirt," Lucas grinned. "It was the best mistake of my life. Marry me, Mia." "Yes," she said, pulling him to his feet and into her arms. "Yes, I will marry you, Lucas Caldwell, even if you still can't order coffee properly." Their wedding took place the following spring on a private beach Lucas had purchased specifically for the occasion. It was a gift not just for the ceremony, but for Mia to have unlimited access to the ocean that inspired her art. The small gathering included coffee shop colleagues alongside shipping executives, all witnessing the union of two people who had found each other through a simple misunderstanding and a spilled drink. When they exchanged vows, Lucas made one additional promise. "I will never again hide any part of myself from you, and I will always trust that the love between us is stronger than any fear." Mia's corresponding promise made their guests laugh. "And I promise to always make your coffee exactly the way you want it, even when you order it wrong." 3 years later, their family expanded with the birth of twin girls, Emma and Lily. Lucas cut back his hours at Caldwell, shipping to be present for bedtime stories and weekend adventures, while Mia's art career flourished, her paintings now displayed in galleries across the country. On the twins' first birthday, Lucas surprised Mia with a gift, a small coffee shop of her own, just blocks from his office. "What's this?" Mia asked, staring at the keys he placed in her palm. "A place for you to create," Lucas explained, leading her inside the empty storefront. "Art on the walls, coffee in the cups, your two passions combined." Mia walked through the space, eyes wide. "You bought me a coffee shop, I bought you a building," Lucas corrected with a smile. "What you do with it is up to you. Gallery, coffee shop, studio, whatever you want." 6 months later, Mistaken Order opened its doors, a combination coffee house and art gallery that quickly became a favorite among both art lovers and caffeine enthusiasts. Mia split her time between painting and overseeing operations, while Lucas proudly brought business associates by for the best coffee in the city. On particularly busy mornings, Lucas would sometimes step behind the counter to help, much to the amusement of the staff and customers who recognized the shipping magnate pulling espresso shots alongside his wife. "You know," he said to Mia one such morning as they worked side by side, "if you hadn't spilled that coffee on me that day, we might never have met properly." Mia smiled, the same smile that had captivated him years ago. "It wasn't an accident. I saw you come in looking all important and distracted, ordering without even looking at me. I decided you needed a wake-up call." Lucas stared at her. "You spilled that coffee on purpose?" "Of course not," Mia laughed, reaching up to kiss him quickly. "But I may have been a little less careful than usual because you were being so arrogant." "I can't believe this," Lucas said, shaking his head in mock outrage. "Our entire relationship is based on your coffee sabotage." "No," Mia corrected, handing him a perfectly made Americano. "Our relationship is based on me fixing your mistake. You ordered the wrong drink, remember?" "Whatever you say, Mrs. Caldwell," Lucas conceded, wrapping an arm around her waist. "I've learned it's usually easier to just agree with you." "Smart man," Mia replied. "That's why you're the CEO." As they served customers together in the warm, art-filled space they'd created, Lucas reflected on how one spilled coffee had changed the course of his life, bringing him from corporate isolation to a life overflowing with love, family, and yes, properly made Americanos with an extra shot. And he wouldn't have it any other way.